The wind howled like a living beast as the twin suns began to dip beneath the jagged ridges of Thornrock Pass, and the air thickened with electric weight, promising another storm. And on the edge of the outlands, where most dared not settle, a single father with oil-stained hands and a plasma torch at his belt worked beneath the flickering canopy of a half-sunken cargo hauler, its metal groaning like an old creature ready to give up. His name was Drell, and his son, Pax, played with stripped servos near the porch of their cracked dome home, laughing softly as the charged wind stirred his hair and threw dust into gleaming orange skies. Drell had seen storms like this before, storms that could rip roofs from domes and tear the breath from lungs, and he was racing the coming night to fix the shelter before it hit again, because they had barely survived the last one, and another might finish what the first had started. The sound came low at first, then louder. A beat, a rhythm, the sound of hooves. No, not hooves. Boots, metal ones, big, heavy ones, crunching on scorched gravel. And when he looked up, she was standing there, framed by the dying light, like something from a dream, but worn and ragged, and clearly not from this part of the galaxy. She looked human, but taller, broad-shouldered beneath her cloak, with black cords wound around her arms and legs in a strange pattern. And though her clothes were torn, her gaze was steady and unafraid, and her voice, when it came, was low and calm and laced with something regal. "I need shelter," she said. "Storm coming. I saw your tools and thought maybe you could help." Drell didn't ask who she was or why she was alone. He just nodded, pointed to the half-buried hauler, said, "I can't offer much, but if you help me patch this up, you can share our roof and maybe stay dry." She looked at him for a long, breathless moment, then stepped forward and without hesitation took a spanner from his kit and got to work. Side by side, they fused panels, realigned the strut matrix, and reinforced the inner frame with scrap from a collapsed skiff. Her hands were fast, precise, too fast for someone untrained. And Drell noticed the way she checked every angle, like someone who had done this not just once or twice, but for years. She said little but watched everything, her eyes scanning the horizon, now and then, as if expecting something or someone. And every time the wind shifted, her fingers twitched like they were remembering an old command. By the time they finished, the storm was close enough to feel like a hand pressing on your back, the air snapping with static and flashes of violet light chasing shadows across the sand. And Drell hurried Pax inside, while the stranger paused at the edge of the porch, her eyes narrowed as if weighing whether to enter. "Come on," Drell called over his shoulder. "Not safe out there. Not for anyone." She followed, and the moment she stepped inside, the reinforced door sealed behind her, and the storm roared in full force outside, shaking the dome and drowning the world in furious sound and violet rain. Pax sat wrapped in a thermal blanket, sipping thick broth from a cup, and staring at the newcomer with open curiosity, while Drell handed her a bowl and said, "Best I got. Hope it helps." She took it without a word, sat with legs crossed, and drank with quiet gratitude. But her eyes never stopped moving, and when Pax asked her name, she hesitated, then said, "Ori." "Just Ori." "Ori," Drell repeated. "Good to meet you and thanks for the help. Most folks wouldn't stop to lift a hand for strangers out here." She gave him a long look, then said, "Not all strangers are dangerous. Some are just far from home." And then, the storm surged again, and for a long while none of them spoke as the wind screamed and sand lashed the dome. And Drell checked the seals again and again, while Pax eventually fell asleep, curled on a makeshift cushion, his fingers still wrapped around a broken servo like it was a toy. Ori stood at the viewport watching the lightning fork across the sky, and Drell came to stand beside her, holding 2 steaming cups of synthebrew, one of which she took with a nod of thanks. "You're not just passing through, are you?" he asked gently. She shook her head slowly. "You hiding?" She didn't answer, but her silence was louder than a scream, and when Drell didn't press, she finally said, "Sometimes power attracts enemies. Sometimes it's safer to be nothing than everything." The brew steamed between them, and Drell said, "My wife died in a storm like this 3 years ago, took most of our home and left me and Pax with nothing. We rebuilt, but some things don't come back." Ori looked at him with something almost like pain in her gaze, then whispered, "You rebuilt because you're strong, because you had to." The storm raged on through the night, and when dawn broke, violet clouds clung to the mountains, and the land steamed under rising suns. Andrell opened the dome to check the damage, while Ori stood with her face to the wind, like she was waiting for a sign. It came not in sound, but in vibration, a low pulse in the ground. Andrell knew it was a ship before it crested the hills, a cruiser, black and gold, with emblems that gleamed like fire. And as it landed with controlled grace, he turned to see Ori straighten and pull back her hood, revealing a small crest behind her ear that shimmered with digital light. "What the hell are you?" he breathed. "I'm Fleet Commander Oriel Taven of the 7th Sector," she said softly, "and you saved me before you knew that." Figures in armor emerged from the ship, weapons ready, but Ori raised a hand and they halted, then knelt. She turned to Drell and said, "I needed to remember what it was like to be nothing, to be seen for who I am, not what I command. You reminded me." Drell stared at her, then looked at Pax, who had run outside to stare at the ship, and for a moment he felt the vastness of the galaxy press down. And then Ori smiled and reached into her cloak and handed him a small silver disc. "A frequency," she said. "If you ever need help, if the storms get too strong or the sky falls, just call. It won't be ignored." He took it numb and watched as she walked toward the cruiser, her stride now full of command, her posture regal, and her people rising to follow her. The ship lifted in a cyclone of dust and wind, and Drell stood in the silence that followed, with his son beside him and the disc warm in his hand. "I liked her," Pax said suddenly. "Me too," Drell whispered. They turned back to the dome. The same, but not the same. The storm had passed, but it had left something behind. Not ruin, but possibility.